So my name is Beryl. I am married with a son, a 3-year-old son. I, for school, I went to Presec Staff Primary School. And then I went to Roses. I read science, and then I went to KNUST and read civil engineering. And yeah, but I haven't worked with it, before. I think that maybe some of the things I think are worthy to note. When I was in St. Andrew's GSS, I started something called Kids Support Club, which was supposed to give back to society. So we'd come together and put stuff together and do a trip to like places that needed support and stuff like that. I think that's where I started my entrepreneurial journey. Yeah, that's basically what it is. I am the firstborn. I have 2 younger siblings, and yes, I think I have a very close relationship with my mom. I absolutely love to travel, so I'm like a travel freak. I don't get to travel as much. I think before COVID, we were doing so many events outside of Accra, and so even though we do the event, I would sneak in and behave like I'm going to work, and then I get to travel. Now, things are coming back in terms of the event department, and so I'm sort of getting back into the travel space again. But yeah, I absolutely love to travel, and then I love the beach. I think that I've always been someone who has wondered how I can help, right? And so across board, like I mentioned to you, the very first thing I ever did was Kids Support Club, just like a support club for people who needed help, so books and anything like that. At this point, I'm very interested in growing people. I love the idea of someone coming in and then the time they have, And so I'm hoping that I can get into a space where I'm able to help more. And not in a random way where like once in a while you do something to help. I'm looking at something that is sustainable and scalable, that is supporting especially I think people who I always say that what we do is a bit away from the streets. We're not very street jacketed sort of, so I'm looking for people who are lost in that space where they need to find themselves, and being able to help them to find the opportunities that are available to them. When I was in KNUST, I had a little bit of a shock. The thing is, I loved physics in high school, and so I said, okay, like I was going to go and do engineering because it was a physics, whatever. But I went in there and there were 250 boys and 25 girls, and everything was just a bit of a shock for me. But I had always been a writer, and so I said, okay, let me write. I sort of partnered with someone in my class who also was a writer. So we're going to create a newsletter for KNUST. And we wanted to echo KNUST to the rest of the world, and so that's where the name Echo came from. And so we started to do that. And a couple of other people in my class, Kobe Hagan, Bryce, came together to help us to do that. We did the very first edition. It turned into a magazine. Initially we were just going to do a lot of writing, and turned into a magazine where it had like all the events that have happened and stuff like that. When we did the first edition, it became very popular on campus, and people loved it so much that now there was a team that was forming for ECHO. And so we did that a few times, and other schools also came on board and said they wanted it in their school. And so we had this upside down magazine, one side KNSC, the other side Legon. And we did that for a bit. What then we got into was that we said, okay, we're always waiting to print the magazine when there's an event. So let's do an event whilst we wait for the events to happen. And that also did very well. We did this event called the Red and White Party, Fire and Ice, and that like blew up in KNSC. And so that was the genesis of, ECHO. It was like a student organization. Other kind of organization, just like a group of students having fun through the magazine and with events that we were doing. But when we were about to finish school, a group of students put themselves together and said they wanted to continue magnet. So like, okay, that would be great. So we were doing national service. I did national service at urban roads because I did civil engineering, and we're like, okay, so we would do the business side of it, like try and look for ads for the magazine and stuff while they, put together the content. And we did that for a bit. That was also when Facebook and all these platforms were becoming popular. Because we're so big on campus, and naturally these were the early adopters of social media, our brand became big on social media. And so the idea was, okay, other brands will now reach us and say, the way that you are loud on social media, I want that for my brand. And that also got us into starting to manage social media for brands. And so, today we call ourselves a 360 marketing agency. We will do your creative and digital. And then we have our BTL, that's events and activations team. And that's, I think, what people know us mostly for. So, sometimes people say, which one is what is your strength? And I'm like, well, because we work in different departments, they are all very different. So the BTL team also does activations for brands and stuff like that. We have Cookies, that is for students. It's a fun brand that basically supports students, to grow in terms of writing and creative and journalism and all of that. And then we have Storyboard, which is production, so video, photo production, all of that. And then the last thing is YCEO Africa, which basically works with influencers and to connect fans to influencers. So that's sort of how we're doing. The idea always is when we find something, if we're doing something, we realize that there's a line that is developing that operates a bit differently from what we are used to. We separate it as a business on its own and then it functions. And so that's basically, yes, how we have grown, yes. And I think also we've been able to set up in Liberia, and then most recently Sierra Leone. I think that, I've always been a creative, and then I found myself a bit boxed up within engineering, and so I needed to find myself again. But I didn't get into this knowing that it was going to be a career. I thought that this was something fun that we were doing. I came across an agency at that time. I didn't even know that there was something like this as a business, but I came across an agency called Swivel Marketing, and George Murimi. That's where we learned everything about this industry, right? Because what we were doing was just having fun and doing events, and brands would leverage on it and stuff like that. So yeah, I just got into it out of exploration. For what we were doing from the beginning, it felt like if we feel like it, we'll do it. If we feel like it, we'll make it happen. And then as things grew, I realized that there are people who depend on this, right? Even for me, like now I have a family. It's not really about having fun or, like waking up and just saying, what do I feel like doing today? There's a lot of people who depend on what we have managed to build. Internally we have a staff of 135 people. So, it's not really, that bit has been a bit of a shock for me when it wasn't really about what you feel like doing or not. You had a duty to these people to ensure that this business was growing so that they also saw improvement in their lives, right? That for me is the biggest shock, because Echo was just like a fun thing. And at this point it became like, no, if you made a mistake, there's so many people you were disappointing, and there's so many people whose livelihoods depended on this, that I needed to take it as seriously as I needed to make sure that it's moving to the next level here. Because we started this thing like a fun thing that we're doing, right? I will call it, we had always been underdogs, and underdogs in the sense that people would say you can't do this, and we want to prove to them that we can, and then that was all that mattered, and that was the fire that we were using to drive ourselves, right? And then we reached a point where there were so many things happening at the same time every day that I realized that, so you realize that, for example, so much depends on me that I was burning out, and I would come and sit here, and then maybe every 5 seconds there's somebody coming in to have a meeting with me. And so I came to that realization that no, this is what they call scaling. So I'd read a lot about the fact that there's a difficult bit of starting up, but the actual hardest part, or the proof of a business in terms of it being able to survive, for the future, was really about whether it could scale. And that meant that I didn't need to be in a room for everything to happen. I didn't need to have to initiate things before it needed to happen. I needed to surround myself with a team of people and systems that will allow things to happen whether or not I am there. And that was like a very big shock for me. Gender challenge I've had. What it is, I'm surrounded by lots of guys. And my whole management team is a lot of guys. And what usually will happen is that I seem to be more emotional, right? And so in the beginning, it was very confusing for me because I was in denial with that whole situation of like, I'm more emotional than them. We mourn differently, we celebrate differently. We're just different people. So in a sense, I sometimes will feel isolated because, for example, if something went wrong, what I wanted to do was to complain and stuff like that, but they would feel like, okay, what's next? What can we do to fix it and stuff like that? And I felt like I hadn't gotten my day in court. I hadn't gotten a chance to go through the motions. I don't know whether that is a difficulty or not, because I feel like when we sit together, we all bring something different, and that's what I bring to the place. And so when they don't worry about things and I'm worrying about it, there have been so many times that it has proven to, have been useful and all of that. So that's it. But I don't think that there's anything like, I don't have that experience, right? Of like, maybe because I'm a woman, they didn't allow me in here or there. There really aren't a lot of women in this, in the agency business. There are quite a number, but we obviously want a lot more. So we have, for example, set up this campaign that we do every year to encourage more agencies to pick more women into the space. I think that maybe since I started a family, like, it's been a bit of a shock for me, because this thing is always on, and then I see that, okay, sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm like, I want to get up and just go and find my son and just cut all this off and stuff like that. So yes, that's where I think that I need to I'm now trying to find the rhythm when it comes to family life, because of who I am, and the fact that I'm a woman. I think men relate to it very differently, but as a woman, that's when I'm sitting, I'm feeling very guilty that, like, I wish I was doing something else. Yes, I have coined something in my head that says, like, if you can survive, your business can survive in Ghana, it can survive anywhere. There's really no help. When I say help, there's someone who was telling me that the kind of things we're doing here, if we're doing it in any other place, maybe we would have been supported so much and stuff like that. It's like you're in a jungle and you have to be figuring it out as you go. You have to Google a lot, you have to read a lot, you have to just find information and add it up, and it's just it can be very isolating or very lonely. Also because most of the things you are trying to do haven't been done yet, and therefore you are doing it for the first time. You make your mistakes. Other people will learn from it, right? But you will have to go through that space. So genuinely, in terms of organized resource, organized funding, organized that whole 9 yards, it's not very common in these parts. It's not, you don't have it, so you sort of struggle through it, and then you figure it out, and then you come and meet the next challenge and stuff. So the industry is a bit difficult, but the terrain is super, super difficult if you're trying to set up a business. So I think that I've become like a forever learner, and what I mean by that is with resources online and with people with a network that I'm trying to build around myself that has people who have experience some of these things. Because there's something I noticed. Sometimes there's something I'm going through, I don't really know who I can speak to about it. And then I randomly talk to somebody. Like, I've had conversations with maybe other agency owners, for example, or even Kofi Hagan, like different people who I realize that we are going through the same things, but we're not talking about it with each other. And so the network is super useful. That's one of the things I'm really focusing on. And then secondly, I'm just also very I am a universal learner. Like I'm always constantly online or somewhere doing a couple of courses, just different things I can do to enrich myself in terms of information and knowledge. So Echo House is a 360 marketing agency. When we say 360, what we are trying to say that we do everything the whole 9 yards that a brand needs to move themselves to the next level. And so presently we have 5 main departments, and these departments function as business units on their own. And so we have, like I mentioned, we have Digit, which is our digital arm. Basically we manage social media content for brands, and so we manage their pages online, their websites, and all that whole system. And we create a lot of the content ourselves, basically through the other departments and stuff. Then we have BTL, or experiential, that will do events for brands. And so I think what most people know us for, the events we do that are owned by us. So the likes of Tidal Rave and Around the World, and some of these other events which are owned by us. But we do those just to almost establish ourselves in terms of what we are capable of doing. A lot of our, let's say 90% of our business is truly in what brands brief us on to do. So for example, a brand wants to launch something, they do a briefing, we send a plan, they approve the plan, and then we move from there. So that's our BTL, or experiential department. Then we have Influencer Africa, which is guiding brands to engage with influencers. And because like that industry is really growing, the idea was we're doing a lot of it, and so we decided to separate it so that we can focus more and provide a better service. And so if a brand is looking to sell using influencers, or create awareness about their product, if they talk to Influencer Africa across the West African, we are able to support with that service. So we have access to them. We would manage them for you. We would provide the strategy, and then we will manage them through the process of activating for your brand. Yes, and then we have Cool Peeps, which is just a fun brand. Cool Peeps is just basically a lot of young people, students who want to be writers and all of that, just putting content out and experimenting until they figure out what the niche that they want to focus on is. And then Storyboard is our photography, videography team. Yeah, that is sort of supporting all the different business units with that service. So I love people. I say that with it's something that I've come to realize about myself. And so I love the idea of seeing people who come in with very little expertise, and then with time they grow themselves into becoming these great experts at one thing or the other. Even for me as a person, several times it has stretched me out of my comfort zone, or stretched me out of the space I would be more comfortable being in. There are so many things about people that you learn, about the fact that at every point in time people have their plans. So sometimes you are planning with people, and people also have their plans, and sometimes it's a lot to learn. Especially because this is a very young team. A lot of people who are working here came right in from campus, and so they are learning, even for example their first email, they are everything about the corporate world they are learning from you. So that's, for me, is like I think maybe for the past 2 years, I think it's only recently that I'm getting to a place where I feel like, okay, but for the past years I was in this place where I'm like, what is this thing? It's like so overwhelming. But yeah, I'm beginning to understand that this is what it is, and I'm sort of making the very best of it. Yeah. But I feel like we have quite a number of, not quite, so many amazing stories of people who walked in here with very little information or knowledge about marketing, about creative and all that, who have become masters at their game, and I absolutely love that. So let's say that when we have planned something and we are done with it, at the very end of an event, my sister is always telling me that Echo people don't know how to go home. So what I mean, it's like when we are done with an event, right? We have another 2 hours of just sitting around and talking about everything that happened. Those are my favorite parts, when I see that there's so much hard work that has gone into some of the things. And so if it works out, then, you know, for everybody, it's like it's a feather in everyone's cap, if I should call it. So I think that that's one of my very favorite moments. Yeah. And I think the other bit is also, I feel like maybe I'm a very accessible person. I'm very open, and anybody can come talk to me at any point in time. I do not operate the strict, book an appointment, do this and that. And so I like the idea that people can just walk up to me and have a conversation at any point in time. I think that Africa is emerging. Everybody's talking about Africa being the next frontier and this and that. And I think that the world can decide what it wants, but Africa needs to decide what role we play in all of this. And so that is my preoccupation at the moment. Almost like, how can I ready myself and the company for all the opportunity that the world brings to these parts, right? So we want to establish ourselves as a West African agency that you can speak to for 360 if you are looking to do business in West Africa. And so it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of looking at what others have done and looking at the mistakes that others have made and ensuring that we have repositioned ourselves in a way that corrects these mistakes, right? And also for what has been gotten right, how can we also leverage on this? How can we learn from the people who have done it right? Very few agencies have moved from these parts and moved into the world. It's always the other way around. And so we are like, how can we position ourselves to be one of the very first agencies to do that? So yes, it's like a lot of learning. Internally, we are setting up something we call an Echo Academy, which is like a proper school that we are launching in January. We want to be able to expose everybody to as much information as possible. We want to train the teams in terms of what is happening in the world and what they can learn from all of this. So that is a lot of what we are looking to do here. My thing is that everything is possible. I feel like half of the time we don't know what we are sitting on, right? And so, I'm always saying that, like, if someone asked me once, so what if this thing doesn't work? I'm like, okay, but the truth is, what if it does work? Sometimes we are looking for the stars to align, and what it means is like everything has to be perfect before you would start. If you look at the story of Echo, where we started out as a magazine, we've gone from, so many different, we are not a magazine anymore, but we started out as what we could do at that moment. And so sometimes you may have like a very big plan or a big idea of somewhere you want to get to. My biggest thing is just start where you are today with what you have. It doesn't matter how small. Just the fact that you're in motion brings so many other opportunities your way that you wouldn't have thought of. And especially if you are paying attention, you're going to realize so many different things that you can also, so many opportunities you can leverage on as you grow. And so yes, that is it. I think that I know that there's a lot of conversation about entrepreneurship, and my thing is, whatever you find to do, and it can be in any space, whether you are an entrepreneur or you are a corporate person, whatever it is you're doing, just being the very best at it. I'm always saying, like, if I won't do it well, then I won't touch it at all. So don't be, you don't enter spaces and give half of yourself. You do everything that you can to be the very best at what you're doing, just because you don't know what tomorrow holds, right? And some of the times where opportunities spring from, we didn't even expect it to have come from there. And so just put in your very best, and the rest usually would align. Yeah. So a powerful woman is not a perfect woman. I think a powerful woman is a woman who has come into herself. And what that means is a woman who has owned everything about herself, from her strengths to her weaknesses, and is taking on the world. Is unapologetic about, what her gaps are, and is willing to learn, is willing to advance herself, it's taking the wins and taking the losses as they come. A powerful woman. I'm always saying that we, as women, we put a lot of stress on ourselves to be perfect, right? And the image we grow up seeing of being a woman, or is like, every day looking a certain way, and speaking well, not talking too much, just saying enough, just being, and being the perfect mother, wife, and if you're in business, being the perfect business person. And so at every point in time, you're asking yourself, you're beginning to feel like, okay, because you are you, and you know that you have all your gaps and errors, you never feel like you are that woman that you see. And sometimes, and I'm always saying that thing. So whenever I get an opportunity to talk to a woman, I'm like, it's like that for everybody. You can't use the 5 minutes or 2 minutes of somebody's life that you see to judge the fact that your life is it has errors, or it's not what it's supposed to be. And so the image of perfection, it takes a toll on all women. Meanwhile, no woman is perfect, right? So just the idea of coming to your own and owning that, like, this is who I am. I will be the very best I can be, but I will rest, and I'll allow myself to make mistakes. I will own my terrain. I will be what I need to be. That whole thing is what I think a powerful woman is.